Ahead of the US president's annual State of the Union address on Thursday evening, several hundred protesters blocked Joe Biden's motorcade as it made its way between the White House and Congress. Footage from the scene shows a massive Palestinian flag being unfurled onto the street as protesters gathered. Some also held up a banner reading "Biden's legacy is genocide." Amid the calls for a ceasefire, Capitol Police stood guard present on all sides. In the speech itself, President Biden was expected to focus on domestic issues like inflation and the border crisis, as well as the war in the Middle East. But he unexpectedly kicked off his address with a nod to Ukraine.
The President of the United States.
If I were smart, I'd go home now. If we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all Ukraine is asking. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended.
Biden's message has been praised by his allies. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the speech was a masterclass.
President Joe Biden's State of the Union address was a masterclass, vigorously presenting his bold vision of progress and possibilities for all of America's families.
If we look at it objectively, it seems that, the big concern here is Joe Biden's cognitive capability. And this was always going to be about, how he said things and how he performed much more than what he actually said. It seems that this was a deployed, a choreographed attempt to make Joe Biden look fresh, as sharp as a pin, that he was bouncing through the crowd, high-fiving people like some MMA fighter or pop star. There was a little bit of cringe to it. And more interesting is how the pro-Joe media, if you like, reported on this incredible performance. He's almost a teenager. The guy is, fresh as a daisy.
The president's delivered, and he delivered huge tonight. I mean, the energy, the vision.
He was fired up, he was shouting, he was angry, and anger sometimes has a way of looking energetic, and he really leaned into that.
Everybody knows that this was a great speech.
Joe Biden delivered what has been described in the press so far as feisty, fiery, heated, supreme, crunchwrap. I'm sorry.
So you can see, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this message was sort of, let's make sure everyone thinks, oh, this is great. Joe isn't 81 years old. He doesn't have any problems remembering things. He never confused the Egyptians and the Israelis. He knows what day it is. He knows what week it is, Nikki,
It's so confusing, isn't it? It makes you disbelieve in what you're actually seeing and thinking yourself. But so how do you see this media coverage? Is it just an attempt to convince people that Biden's fit to serve?
Yeah, well, it seems that, and particularly, again, as I say, in the pro-Joe media, there's a lot of correlation in the messaging here. We had people like Tucker Carlson watching this, following it in great detail, minute by minute, in a live sort of recount. And we've also had Americans taking to social media, particularly onto Twitter, to suggest this guy's completely out of touch with the reality for ordinary Americans. There's a lot of problems in the United States. 40 million people living in poverty. Families are struggling to get their bills paid. People are struggling to pay their rents as well. So let's have a look at Tucker Carlson's response, and you got to say he doesn't hold back. He gives them both barrels in this, and it's quite a tough response from Tucker Carlson.
That was possibly the darkest, most un-American speech ever given by an American president. In fact, it wasn't a speech, it was a rant, entirely lacking in decency or generosity to his fellow Americans. Biden quickly explained that actually his top priority has nothing to do with America. His top priority is sending billions more to Ukraine. Not ending the invasion of our own country by drug cartels, not our degrading economy you experience every day, not our collapsing schools. There's no explanation of what the goal is here. There's lie after lie. Joe Biden doesn't care. There was no upside for you in any of the things that he said.
So, Shay, what's the Republican response to the address been like?
Well, it's been predictably almost angry in its response. I mean, the Republicans have suggested that Biden is completely out of touch. Mr. Trump, of course, came out and said that this was the angriest, most bad-humoured State of the Union address in history.
That may be the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made. It was an embarrassment to our country.
Like so many families across America, my husband Wesley and I just watched President Biden's State of the Union address from our living room. And what we saw was the performance of a permanent politician who has actually been in office for longer than I've been alive. One thing was quite clear, though. President Biden just doesn't get it. He's out of touch.
Quite saccharine, this smiling lady delivering the rebuttal of the speech. Unusual. But I suppose the takeaway, Nikki, from Biden's speech is that if the only good thing about the speech really was, I mean, he did mention Ukraine in the speech first. The first thing he mentioned in the speech was Ukraine, of course, which is also telling about the Biden administration's priorities when it comes to the United States. If Ukraine comes first, if the only thing Biden had to do was not fall off a stage, not forget somebody's name, not make a catastrophic mistake, as he's done in many other forums in this centrally important American speech. If that was the only thing that it was the real success here, is that he didn't make a complete fool of himself in many ways, that says a lot about the state of US politics.
Well, we got reaction from US talk show host and commentator Steve Malzberg, who says Joe Biden didn't look or sound too presidential during his keynote speech.
Well, first of all, he started the speech about 18 minutes late, but he also did something else at the beginning. He jumped the gun. Usually the Speaker of the House, who sits behind him during the speech with the Vice President, the Speaker of the House announces officially, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, and they applaud again, and then he starts his speech. There was no announcement because the president didn't wait for him to be announced.
Yeah, Ukraine was the opening topic. It is an election year. Leaders tend to talk tough doing that. And the Ukraine war, I suppose, is good territory for that. But do you think Americans were listening in on that, Steve, and just thinking, oh, hold on a minute, is this the State of the Union address in Kiev or in Washington?
I was shocked that he started basically with Ukraine, with everything that's going on in the country. When you look at poll after poll after poll of what topics, what issues are most important to voters in all the states that have voted in the primaries, you had it right. It's immigration, it's inflation, it's the economy. And he starts with Ukraine. It was definitely a campaign speech, without a doubt. He was combative. And you know, when he finally got to immigration, 40 minutes into the speech, 40 minutes, the number one issue in America right now, and he waited 40 minutes to get to it.
The guts of 6 months out or so from the election now. Will this speech, will it have helped his re-election chances, or by dint of Donald Trump not being mentioned by the incumbent leader, can he just sit back and watch his numbers rise even more now?
He referenced him 13 times or more, from what I gather, but he never mentioned him by name. Look, the media is already saying, wow, I mean, this shows his age is not an issue. He has the stamina. He was funny. He was combative. He could do it. Wow. But you know what? It's March, the beginning of March. We got to go to November. A lot of stuff is going to happen to Donald Trump, to Joe Biden, to this country, to the world. And I don't think when push comes to shove, this is going to make that much of a difference.